She refused to shake my hand on a live stream, and the room laughed like I'd just been put in my place. I didn't pull my hand back, not because I was brave, because I wanted the camera to capture the exact second they chose disrespect. And because I already knew something they didn't. By sunrise, their biggest funding promise could vanish with one phone call. Quick one before I take you inside that room. Tell me where you're listening from, USA or UK, and drop your city in the comments. Because what happened next is the reason I stopped begging for respect and started charging for it. I walked into the boardroom 5 minutes early, the kind of room that smells like glass cleaner and expensive coffee. Floor-to-ceiling windows, a table long enough to make silence feel official. The company logo etched into the wall like a warning. This place belongs to power. I carried a simple white orchid arrangement in my left arm. Not flashy, not romantic. It was a tribute bouquet, one of those polite corporate gestures they send when a founder steps down. The kind of flowers that say, "We're civilized people, even when we're not." They saw the flowers and decided what I was. Not partner, not authority, not final decision. Just decoration. I took the seat that had my name card on it, far from the center, near the end, close enough to be present, far enough to be ignored. Then the board chair arrived. She didn't enter like a person. She entered like a verdict. Platinum hair pulled tight. A blazer so sharp it could cut paper. Smile practiced, like she'd worn it through 100 investor dinners and never once meant it. The people around her stood fast. Hands reached for water glasses. Chairs shifted. Everyone got busy pretending they weren't nervous. A man 2 seats from the head of the table cleared his throat and said, "Madam Chair." She nodded without looking at him. Her eyes found the live stream camera first. A small red light glowed beside the lens. She gave it a brief smile, friendly for the public, cold for anyone in the room. Then she looked at me. Not my face, my seat, my flowers, my hands. I stood to greet her anyway, because I was raised to do that. I reached across the table with my right hand, polite and calm. Her gaze dropped to my fingers like she was looking at something on her shoe. Then she smiled and said, loud enough for the mic, "Oh, we don't shake hands with support staff." Support staff. I felt the word land on me like a wet coat. The reaction was instant. A ripple of chuckles, a chair scraping back, someone coughing to hide a grin. One of the directors smirked at his tablet like he'd just witnessed a small, harmless joke. And the red light stayed on. I kept my hand extended. For half a second, her smile twitched. Not fear, annoyance. Like my refusal to shrink was an inconvenience she hadn't planned for. Her eyes flicked up to check my face, like she was trying to see whether I'd understood the hierarchy she'd just announced. I lowered my hand slowly. Not like a defeated person. Like someone ending a conversation. "I'm here because I was asked to attend," I said. My voice stayed even. She leaned back in her chair as if the chair had just been cleaned, and my words were dust. "Then stand where you're told," she replied. This session is for senior leadership. A few more laughs, softer this time. Nervous laughs. The kind people make when they sense something is off, but they'd rather be on the winning side than the right one. At the head of the table, the incoming CEO shifted in his seat. He looked at her. Then at the table. Then away. He said nothing. That silence was louder than the laughter. I sat down at my assigned seat, still calm, still quiet, still watching. Because in rooms like that, you learn more in 30 seconds than you do in 30 emails. You learn who laughs first. You learn who avoids eye contact because they don't want guilt on camera. You learn who stays silent when a line is crossed. And you learn who thinks power is something you can declare out loud. The chairwoman tapped her folder once. "Let's begin." Slides lit up on the screen. Timelines, projections, bold promises. People started talking like I wasn't in the room. They spoke over each other with confidence that didn't come from certainty. It came from habit. "We're aligned on the launch quarter," someone said. "Our market share jumps if we execute fast," another replied. "The capital stack is solid," a third voice added, like the words alone could make money stay loyal. No one asked my name. No one asked why there was a name card at the table for someone they were pretending didn't exist. They simply continued. Then the chairwoman's eyes drifted to the orchid arrangement resting against my chair leg. "You can put that outside," she said, without looking directly at me. "It's distracting." I glanced at the bouquet, then back at her. "It was brought for this meeting," I said. "I'll keep it here." Her head turned slightly, her smile stayed, but her eyes sharpened. "That wasn't a suggestion." "It wasn't a request," I replied. The room went quiet for a beat. Not because they suddenly respected me, because they were surprised I spoke at all. The incoming CEO looked up again, like he was trying to solve a puzzle he hadn't noticed earlier. The finance director, mid-50s, careful posture, glasses that made him look kinder than his job required, cleared his throat. "Before we continue," he said, "we still need the final authorization on the primary funding release." The chairwoman waved a hand like she was shooing a fly. "That's procedural," she snapped. "Legal has it." The finance director didn't smile. "It isn't procedural at this level," he said gently. "It's the key." She exhaled through her nose, annoyed. "We've been reviewing this for months." He hesitated, and then, just a flicker, his eyes moved toward me. Not a friendly look, a warning look, like he was trying to save them from walking off a cliff while pretending he wasn't. The chairwoman followed his glance. Her attention finally landed on me, the way a judge looks at a witness they didn't expect. "Who exactly are you here for?" she asked, voice cool. I didn't rush. I didn't over-explain. "I'm here for the money," I said. A board member let out a short laugh. Another smirked. The chairwoman tilted her head. "That's being handled?" "Not without me," I replied. The room didn't erupt this time, it froze. The incoming CEO leaned forward slightly. "Excuse me?" The finance director opened a folder and spoke carefully, like he was choosing words that could survive court. "She's listed as the sole release signatory," he said. "Final authority." The chairwoman's smile thinned. "That can't be right." I met her eyes. "It's right," I said. "And I asked to be here in person because I don't delegate trust anymore." Silence spread across the table like a slow spill. Somebody swallowed. Somebody's pen stopped moving mid-note. The chairwoman straightened in her seat, trying to recover her rhythm. "So, you're saying you control the funds?" she said, like the sentence tasted wrong. "I'm saying I control whether they arrive," I replied. The incoming CEO's voice came out quieter than before. "How much are we talking about?" I didn't smile. I didn't brag. "Enough that your plan doesn't breathe without it," I said. The chairwoman's jaw tightened. And for the first time since I walked in, the room looked at me like a person instead of a prop. I could have stopped there, let them scramble, let them apologize. But apology wasn't the point. Respect wasn't a gift they could hand me after the insult. Respect was the cost of entry. I reached into my folder and slid a single page forward, just enough for the people near the middle to see a bold heading at the top. The finance director watched the page move and didn't stop me. The chairwoman leaned in slightly, eyes narrowing. "What is that?" she asked. I kept my voice calm. "It's the condition tied to the release," I said. "The one your team signed and forgot to read out loud." She didn't like that sentence. I could see it. Because people like her hate two things: being corrected and being documented. I lifted my eyes toward the corner of the room where the red light still glowed. Then I looked back at her. "Do you want to restart this meeting properly?" I asked. "Or do you want the camera to keep recording what just happened?" Her mouth opened slightly, just enough to answer. And right then, my phone vibrated once under the table. One silent buzz. A message preview flashed on my screen from my compliance lead. "Confirmation ready. Say the word." I didn't touch the phone. I let the vibration fade. I let the room sit inside the moment they created. And I smiled. Just a little. Because I realized something simple. They thought they were deciding where I belonged. But in the next few minutes, I would be deciding whether their future belonged to them. I watched the chairwoman's face shift through emotions she'd trained herself not to show on camera. First irritation, then calculation, then the quick mask of control sliding back into place like a helmet. She glanced at the other directors, searching for someone to anchor her authority, but the room had changed shape. The laughter was gone. The air had weight now. The incoming CEO cleared his throat like he wanted to rescue the meeting from the edge it had reached, but even he didn't know what to say. The chairwoman picked up the page I'd slid forward and held it between two fingers as if it might contaminate her. "This is not standard," she said. Her voice wasn't loud anymore. It was careful. "It doesn't need to be standard," I replied. "It needs to be binding." A director near the middle adjusted his glasses and leaned to read. Another reached for a copy of the agreement folder, flipping pages fast, the way people do when they realize they've been nodding along to something they didn't actually understand. The finance director kept his eyes down, but his posture said he already knew where this was going. The chairwoman tapped the paper once. "This conduct trigger," she said, like the words insulted her. "It's vague." "It's simple," I answered. "If conduct during negotiations causes reputational harm, the release can be withdrawn immediately." Someone scoffed softly, then stopped when nobody joined in. The incoming CEO leaned forward. "Reputational harm is subjective," he said. "Not in this case," the finance director replied before I even had to. He opened his folder, pulled out a highlighted section, and read like he was presenting in court. "It doesn't require intent," he said. "Only documented impact." The chairwoman's eyes snapped to him. "You're really going to do this now?" He didn't flinch. "We're doing it because it's in the agreement." She turned back to me, and this time she looked directly at my face. "You came in here looking for a moment," she said. "I came in here looking for a meeting?" I replied. "You created the moment." The red light on the camera kept glowing. That tiny dot was the only thing in the room that felt honest. It didn't care about titles. It didn't care about tone. It captured what happened. It kept receipts. One of the directors glanced up at the camera and then away again, as if eye contact with the truth made him uncomfortable. The chairwoman sat back and forced a thin smile. "All right," she said, voice smoothing out. "Then let's be adults about it. We can reset. We can move forward." "We can," I agreed, "but reset doesn't erase what was recorded." Her smile tightened. "We say things. People misinterpret." "People saw what they saw," I replied. "And the agreement says impact matters." A director on the far side of the table flipped to the clause and read under his breath. His eyebrows lifted, just slightly. That tiny expression told me everything. They hadn't treated me like I was important because they didn't believe I could be. They hadn't believed because they hadn't bothered to check. The chairwoman's phone vibrated on the table. She ignored it. Then another phone buzzed. A third. Low, uneven vibrations like distant thunder. But it was still early. Nothing had happened yet. The room was just nervous now because possibility had entered. The chairwoman pressed her palm against the table like she could physically hold control in place. "This meeting is for final alignment," she said. "Not introductions, not drama." "Final alignment requires the person who can say yes," I replied. "Or no." The incoming CEO looked between us like a man watching two different futures fight for space. "If you're the release authority," he said to me, "why didn't anyone know?" "Because you didn't ask," I said. I didn't say it with attitude. I said it like a fact. Most rooms assume the loudest person holds the keys. That's not how money works. A small silence followed, and it wasn't hostile. It was thoughtful. The kind of quiet that happens when someone realizes they've been trained to respect the wrong signals. The finance director cleared his throat again. "Madam Chair," he said, "we should formally acknowledge roles on record." "On record," she repeated, and her eyes darted to the camera again. She hated that phrase now, because "on record" meant she couldn't reshape the story later without someone playing it back. She exhaled slowly, then forced her voice into something that sounded polite. "Fine," she said. "State your name and position for the record." It was the first time she'd invited me to speak like I was a person. But it wasn't respect. It was strategy. She wanted a neat narrative. The board chair tried to be professional, the fun person was sensitive, and the internet overreacted. I didn't give her that. "My name is Maren Caldwell," I said. "I'm the managing partner of Calder Rowe Private Capital, and I'm the final signatory on the primary release." I paused just long enough for the room to absorb the words. "I'm also the person who requested that conduct clause." A director frowned. "Why request it?" he asked, genuinely curious now. I looked at him, then around the room, then back at the chairwoman. "Because the last deal I delegated collapsed," I said. "Not from numbers, from disrespect, from ego, from people thinking they could behave however they wanted as long as the money still arrived." The incoming CEO's mouth tightened. "So this is personal," he said. "It's protective," I replied. "I protect capital the way you protect a company, with rules." The chairwoman let out a short laugh, but it wasn't amused, it was strained. "You're telling me," she said, "that one awkward comment can cost this company everything?" "I'm telling you," I replied, "that culture isn't soft, it's risk." The finance director nodded once, a small, almost invisible nod. He'd been waiting for someone to say that out loud in a room full of people who treated human behavior like an afterthought. The chairwoman leaned forward. "We can apologize," she said quickly. "If that's what you want, we can do it right now." A director near the end shifted. Another whispered something to the person beside him. The incoming CEO watched my face like he was trying to predict which version of me would answer. I didn't react to the word apologize. I didn't smile. I didn't harden. I simply asked, "Do you know what an apology is?" The chairwoman blinked. "It's acknowledging a mistake," she said. "No," I replied. "That's acknowledgement. An apology is taking responsibility without bargaining for the outcome." The room went quiet again. Someone swallowed. The chairwoman's eyes narrowed, and I could tell she hated that she'd been put in a position where her words had to be careful. She was used to speaking like consequences were for other people. "Fine," she said. "I apologize for any offense." There it was, the corporate apology. The kind that blames the listener's feelings instead of the speaker's behavior. I didn't move. The finance director's lips pressed together, disappointed. The incoming CEO looked down. Even he seemed to recognize it was weak. "Thank you," I said, voice calm. "That's documented now." Her head snapped up. "Documented?" "It's live," I reminded her, glancing at the camera. "And recorded." For a moment, the chairwoman looked like she wanted to order someone to shut it off, but she couldn't. Turning it off now would look worse. It would look like hiding. And she'd already promised transparency. Transparency is a lovely word when it's aimed at employees. It's terrifying when it turns toward the board. A director spoke up, trying to move the meeting along. Can we proceed with projections? The chairwoman seized the opportunity. Yes, she said, grateful for something familiar. Finance, continue. Slides advanced. Numbers filled the screen again. People spoke louder, overcorrecting, trying to pretend the last 10 minutes were a small bump. I listened without interrupting. They talked about quarterly targets, cost synergies, efficiency, headcount adjustments. They said streamline like it didn't mean layoffs. They said optimize like it didn't mean squeezing people. They said aggressive like it was a compliment. The incoming CEO pointed to a chart. We can hit this if the capital lands on schedule, he said. He looked at me when he said if. That word had changed meaning now. A director asked, when is the release scheduled? The finance director answered, tomorrow morning, pending final confirmation. The chairwoman jumped in. It will be confirmed, she said quickly, like saying it made it true. I waited. I let the room build its confidence again. Because confidence reveals character. People get careless when they think they're safe. The chairwoman leaned back, regained her rhythm, started making small jokes again, trying to restore her social power. She even smiled at the incoming CEO, the way people smile when they think they've contained a problem. Then, during another slide, she glanced at the flowers again like they offended her. Those still need to go, she said, voice sharper. They make this look unprofessional. I stared at her for a second. Not angry, not shocked, just clear. You're worried about how flowers look? I said softly, while you're ignoring how you look. A few heads turned. A director shifted uncomfortably. The chairwoman's face tightened. Excuse me? You're on a live stream, I said. You told the world you don't shake hands with people you think are beneath you, and you're still trying to control the room by controlling a bouquet. The incoming CEO inhaled slowly. The finance director stared at his notes. A director near the middle rubbed his forehead. The chairwoman's voice dropped. Cold and dangerous. You're enjoying this? No, I replied. I'm clarifying it. She stared at me like she wanted to win through intimidation. You realize, she said, that if you pull this funding, you'll damage people who did nothing wrong? I realize, I replied, that culture always hurts the innocent first. That's why it has to be corrected at the top. The chairwoman's phone buzzed again. She glanced at it this time. Just a flicker. Then she placed it face down, pretending she hadn't seen anything. But her throat moved when she swallowed, and I caught it. The incoming CEO's phone buzzed too. He looked at his screen and frowned. A director's phone buzzed, then another, more this time. The sound spread across the table like a warning wave. The chairwoman's smile returned, forced. Can we silence our devices? She said. We're in a meeting. The chief financial officer, seated closer to the screen, didn't answer her. He was already staring at his phone like it had delivered a sentence. His face changed in stages. Not panic yet. First confusion, then disbelief, then the slow drain of color as he read again. He looked up, eyes moving from one director to the next as if searching for a way to say it without saying it. Hold on, he murmured. The incoming CEO leaned in. What is it? The CFO didn't respond immediately. He swiped again, then again. His fingers moved too fast, like speed could rewrite the message. The chairwoman sat up straighter. What's happening? She demanded. The CFO swallowed. The primary commitment, he said, voice tight, has been flagged. The chairwoman's eyes narrowed. Flagged how? He looked at me for the briefest moment. And in that glance, the whole room understood where this was coming from. He turned back to her. As at 5 minutes ago, he said. It shows as withdrawn. The word landed like a door slamming. Withdrawn. A director dropped his pen. Another whispered, "No." The incoming CEO stared at the CFO, then at his own phone. The chairwoman's voice rose, sharp with denial. "That's impossible," she said. "We're mid-meeting." The CFO's jaw tightened. "It's effective immediately," he replied. "The notification is confirmed." The room went silent, but it wasn't the stunned silence of confusion. It was the stunned silence of consequence. The incoming CEO looked straight at me. "Did you do that?" he asked. I met his eyes and answered with the simplest truth. "Yes." The chairwoman stood so fast her chair scraped loud against the floor, the sound echoing like embarrassment. "You will reverse it," she snapped. I didn't move. "There's nothing to reverse," I said. "Once it's executed, it's executed." The CFO glanced at his phone again. "Cleared," he added quietly. "Full amount." A director's voice cracked. "How much?" The CFO spoke like he hated being the messenger. $1.84 billion, he said. The chairwoman froze. The incoming CEO's mouth parted slightly. Somebody whispered, "We're dead." Phones began to ring now, not just buzz. Calls from trading desks, calls from legal, calls from advisors who smelled blood in the water. The chairwoman turned toward the camera as if she'd forgotten it existed. The red light still glowed, steady and indifferent, recording the moment her power stopped working. She looked back at me, eyes burning. "On what grounds?" she demanded. I reached forward and slid the agreement folder toward the center of the table, the same page still visible. "Conduct during negotiations," I said. "Reputational harm." The chairwoman's voice shook with anger. "That clause was never meant to be used like this." I stood up slowly, not dramatic, just deliberate. "It was meant to be enforced," I said. And then, without raising my voice, I added the sentence that made the room feel colder. "And the documentation is already public." The chairwoman's eyes darted to the camera again, like she was seeing it for the first time. The small red light in the corner of the room was still glowing, still capturing every breath, every twitch, every lie that tried to form. For a second, nobody spoke. Not because they were being polite. Because their brains were racing to rewrite a reality that had already been recorded. Phones rang across the table in waves, the kind of calls that don't happen when things are fine. Calls from bankers, calls from lawyers, calls from people who only speak when risk has teeth. The chairwoman pointed at me like pointing could restore hierarchy. "This meeting is suspended," she snapped. "No," the chief financial officer said quietly. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. He looked up from his phone, face pale. "If we suspend now, we trigger emergency disclosure protocols. Markets will see the withdrawal before we even leave this room." The chairwoman's mouth opened and closed again. The room was no longer hers. It was the market's. It was the records. It was the consequences of her own words. One director covered his phone with his palm and leaned in. "Trading desks are reacting already," he whispered. "Pre-markets down double digits." Another director's voice came out thin. "This can't be happening because of one comment." "It isn't because of one comment," I replied, calm. "It's because of a pattern you didn't think anyone would price." The incoming CEO stood halfway, then sat again like his body couldn't decide whether to fight or flee. His phone buzzed nonstop. He stared at it, then looked at me. "You're going to collapse the deal over optics?" he said. "Not optics," I replied. "Behavior." The chairwoman slammed her hand on the table. "You planned this." "I prepared for it," I said. "There's a difference." She paced 2 steps, then stopped, realizing pacing looked unstable on camera. She straightened her blazer, smoothing it down like she could smooth the moment too. "We can renegotiate," she said quickly. "We can make concessions. We can revise terms. We can—" "This isn't a negotiation," I interrupted gently. "It's a consequence." The CFO's phone rang again. He answered and listened for 5 seconds, then hung up without saying a word. That was when the fear shifted from abstract to physical. People started gathering papers. Not to work, to protect themselves. The lead independent director, a man who had stayed quiet until now, cleared his throat. "We need to address governance," he said. The chairwoman turned sharply. "This is not the time." "It is," he replied, "especially now." She stared at him like she couldn't believe he'd said it out loud. "You're going to stage a board revolt on a live stream?" she hissed. "We're going to contain the damage," he answered, "and you are the damage." The room went still again, but this time it wasn't shock. It was decision. Directors looked at each other in quick, careful glances. Not loyalty, calculation. The kind that happens when the top person stops looking untouchable. One director spoke up, voice low. "The footage matters," he said. "We can't dismiss it, not in this climate." Another added, "Employees will see it, investors will see it, regulators will see it, and we'll be asked why we tolerated it." The chairwoman's face flushed a hard red. "So you're siding with her?" she said, spitting the word "her" like it was beneath her tongue. "We're siding with survival," the lead director replied. "There's a difference." The incoming CEO finally spoke, voice tight. "My appointment hasn't even been ratified." "That's part of the problem," the lead director said. "We moved too fast. We ignored culture risk. We ignored reputational risk. We ignored character." I watched the chairwoman's eyes flick across faces, searching for someone to rescue her. But nobody wanted to be seen rescuing her now. Not on camera, not with phones ringing, not with the stock bleeding in real time. The CFO set his phone down carefully. "For the record," he said, "the withdrawal is confirmed, cleared, and irreversible." He glanced at the conduct clause page, then at me. "The grounds are documented." The chairwoman whispered, almost to herself, "This is unbelievable." "No," I replied. "This is measurable." She snapped her head up. "You think this makes you powerful?" she hissed. "Walking in with flowers and threats?" I met her gaze without flinching. "I walked in with authority," I said. "You chose not to see it." Something in her face cracked. Not remorse, not apology. The realization that her usual weapons weren't working. That she couldn't laugh her way out. That she couldn't charm the camera and bully the room at the same time anymore. And then the vote started. It didn't look dramatic. It looked procedural. Like people were following a script they'd rehearsed in case they ever needed to remove a leader who became a liability. Motions, seconded motions, formal language. Administrative leave pending review. Emergency governance session. Interim chair appointment. The chairwoman sat down slowly, like her legs had lost their confidence. She stared at the table surface, at the polished wood reflecting a future that had just disappeared. No one looked at her with pity. Pity is still attention. They looked through her. I didn't speak during the vote. I didn't need to. The record was already speaking for me. When the lead director announced the result, the chairwoman's jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jump. "This is a mistake," she said, voice shaking. "This will blow over." "It won't," the CFO replied. "The public record doesn't blow over. It gets replayed." The incoming CEO stood, finally, and walked around the table toward me. He stopped at a respectful distance, like he wasn't sure whether to plead or negotiate. This doesn't have to get ugly, he said. It already is, I replied. And it didn't start with the withdrawal. It started with the laugh. His eyes dropped. I should have spoken up, he said. I held his gaze. You should have. I agreed. He swallowed. If you reverse it, we can fix this. I shook my head once. Slow. Final. I don't repair systems that reward disrespect, I said. I build new ones. He looked like he wanted to argue, but the room behind him was collapsing into quiet chaos. Phones, whispered calls, directors planning statements, lawyers drafting language that said nothing and meant less. I picked up my folder. I reached down and lifted the orchid arrangement in one hand. The flowers were still perfect, still innocent, still doing their quiet job of looking polite, while people behaved badly around them. I walked to the center of the table and set the flowers down gently, not as a gift, as a marker. Then I looked at the camera, not dramatically, not like a villain. Like a professional who understands what accountability requires. Respect isn't a courtesy you earn after the fact, I said, voice steady. It's the cost of entry. I turned and walked out while the room tried to decide whether I had just ruined them or saved everyone who came after. By sunset, my phone was warm from messages I didn't open. Analysts wanted quotes. Reporters wanted a sentence. Partners wanted assurance. A junior associate texted, "They're replaying the handshake clip in the lobby." I got to my hotel and turned on the TV without sound. A headline crawled across the screen. Board chair placed on leave after live stream incident. Funding withdrawn. 2 commentators argued beneath it. One insisted it was cancel culture. The other called it governance failure. I didn't care what they named it. Names are what people use when they don't want to admit the truth. The truth was simple. They laughed at the wrong moment and learned what it costs when the money is watching. Just after dawn, my phone rang. A calm, legal voice. "The board has suspended the chairwoman," he said. "Interim leadership is in place. We'd like to discuss next steps." "There aren't any," I replied. A pause. "We're prepared to make concessions." "I'm not prepared to accept them," I said. Another pause, longer this time. "So you're walking away?" "I already did," I replied. I ended the call and sat for a minute in silence. Not victorious, not bitter, just clear. I thought about the people who had laughed, the ones who stayed quiet, the ones who looked away because it was safer. I thought about every employee who had watched that live stream and felt something heavy in their stomach because they recognized the tone. I opened my laptop and joined a video call with my partners. No slides, no theatrics, just faces and reality. "We're launching the new fund," I said. "Effective immediately." One partner raised a brow. "Terms?" "Conduct first," I replied. "Automatic withdrawal for documented disrespect. No warnings, no exceptions." Someone smiled, not because it was petty, but because it was clean. Clear boundaries, real accountability. "That will narrow the field," another partner said. "Good," I answered. I looked down at the orchid arrangement sitting near the hotel door, still untouched. I picked it up and carried it downstairs. In the lobby, a receptionist looked up and smiled politely. I placed the flowers on the counter. "For you," I said. She blinked, surprised. "Oh, thank you," she replied. I nodded and walked out into the morning. I didn't look back at the building. I didn't need to. Some decisions make noise, others simply take effect. And the lesson I carry forward is the one they learned too late. Power doesn't live in titles or volume. It lives in choices made calmly at the moment they matter. If you felt that twist in your chest when the room laughed, if you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or treated like you didn't belong, tell me in the comments. Where are you listening from, and what's the most disrespectful thing someone ever tried to play off as a joke? And if you want more stories where silent boundaries become loud consequences, hit like, subscribe, and stay with me because the next one starts even colder than this.